I've had a lot to talk about with regard to the Biden administration's continued failure, and I've been documenting it on this channel, well, basically since the beginning of his presidency. But in the last few weeks, it has only gotten even worse. I've already done plenty of videos on Biden's economy, and the supply chain problems, which I've talked about in some of those, have just gotten even worse over the recent days and weeks, with many photos being posted onto the Twitter sphere and many other social media platforms, documenting exactly how bad it's gotten in certain places. Now, luckily I haven't run into any of these problems as of yet, though seeing with how much this has caused problems for other people, I wouldn't be surprised if it happens in the not-too-distant future. And another interesting thing that you'll find if you go looking up these tags, such as supply chain, bear shells Biden, and the like, on places specifically like Twitter, you will find many of the DNC Defense Brigade continually trying to attempt to sweep the whole problem under the rug, pretend that there are no supply chain issues whatsoever, and these people are doggedly asserting that Biden's been super great for the economy. Look at what he's done for the unemployment rate. And this is something which is legitimately said by some of these people. Do I think that some of these people may end up being, well, not actually people in the long term, and rather bots? Well, yeah, that seems fairly likely. But a lot of you have to remember that even though there were problems with the 2020 election, there were people who actually voted for the dude, and people who I presume are still defending him. But that doesn't go for all too many people, since even at this point, Politico polls are showing that Biden is falling apart, with 62% of people in a Politico poll, which, if we're being completely accurate and actually showing this to reality and not Politico's imaginary version of reality, probably looks more something more like 70% of people say that Biden is at fault for the inflation we are currently going under, which is only going to intensify over the coming months and potentially years, just so you're aware, with many people coming out and saying that, well, might end up getting worse before it gets better. And the most amazing thing about Biden's incompetence here, more than just the utter collapse of so many things in his administration, so many of his policies, is more the admitted incompetence of many of the people in his administration. And one of the key examples of this has to be Merrick Garland, who has been going out over the past few months railing against domestic terrorism and trying to go after January 6th protesters/rioters and against school-age children's parents for going to school boards and being mad that their children are being taught a racist ideology. And he recently was at a hearing in one of the houses of the Congress, and he displayed a massive, almost unbelievable level of basic incompetence on many of the issues that he speaks of, but most importantly would happen to be on those domestic terrorism allegations, where in both of these cases he admits to not knowing the first thing about either of those issues, whether it be riots which happened to invade upon buildings in the Capitol, which he didn't know about a October 14th inquest into the Department of the Interiors by extremist environmentalists. He admits to not knowing a thing about that and hesitates to call them domestic terrorists in the first place. And on top of that, with an issue that he expressly talked about, that being domestic terrorists at school board meetings, he admits to not knowing the basic facts of the exact case which acted as the impetus for him even talking about it. For those who aren't aware somehow, we're talking about the case in which a man was arrested at a school board meeting for being a bit boisterous, out of order, you might say, a bit miffed and angry at the school board. And what was happening? Well, because his daughter was forcibly sodomized. And Garrett Garland now is saying that when he was talking about domestic terrorist parents, he didn't know that the basic facts of the case and wasn't aware of these facts until just today. It's amazing, and it strains credulity that anyone in the Biden administration can be this incompetent. And this doesn't just go for Merrick Garland. We could talk going back to some of the things that were said on Afghanistan, with many of his war advisors, whether it be General Milley or many of the other people in Biden's orbit, saying that they had no idea there would be any problems in Afghanistan, and they were simply hoping that it would go for the best. It is so absurd, and it just goes to show exactly how bad the Biden administration has been, that even as everything is falling apart, they simply cannot bring themselves to admit that they've been incompetent on any of this. Because while these people like Merrick Garland, or take Jen Psaki for as well, are admitting to not knowing anything at all about what they really should know, they're still saying they're doing everything right and that there is no problems whatsoever. You'll still see people like Jen Psaki come out and say that the unemployment rate isn't a problem because it's half of what it was last year, when most of the states in the country were still in the middle of lockdowns. Compared to now, where there are a multitude of completely different problems that didn't exist back then. Now, there's a problem of a labor shortage, something which didn't exist fully back in October. And back then, many states were still coming out of these stringent lockdowns, and some, like California, weren't even doing that, and we're still in the middle of the utter garbage policies that they are still largely a part of now. That doesn't apply to today, where the unemployment rate is still below not only what you'd want, but under expectations by the Biden administration. It shouldn't be surprising that then people come out and say it was a disappointment. Because guess what, Harris administration? You set up the bar and failed to clear it. And that goes in every single one of these cases. They continually set their own bars, they continually set up their own goals and aspirations, and continually fail to meet them in every respect. It's kind of impressive at this point. But that's where I'm going to leave you guys off. If you enjoyed that video, do in fact subscribe down below and check out my platforms on other websites. I am on BitChute, I'm on Odyssey, I'm on Rumble, I'm on Brighteon, I'm also on Minds, Gab, and Getter for those of you who want to check out some text posts. And all of those links can be found down in the description. I'm KelKidman, this has been Breaking on the Daily, and I'm out.